Hey class, today we're going to be talking about how to write equations algebraically. Meaning from here on out we're going to be finding out how to write equations without a graph. So in order to accomplish this goal, we know that y equals mx plus b is the main focus, that is the template that we're following. And we know that m is a slope, b is our y-intercept. But for the first step that we have to do in order to write it algebraically is that we have to identify the m, the slope. We can use the slope formula where it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, or we can use the little mini tables in order for us to find slope with 2 points. Okay, after we do that, we got to identify or find the y-intercept, and we know the y-intercept is the b. Now this is going to be the hardest step because we have to take the slope and we're going to substitute the slope and the coordinate of one of those points, okay, into y equals mx plus b, and we're going to solve for the b. Once we find the y-intercept, which is the b, then we can move to the next step, which is writing our equation in slope-intercept form, and that's y equals mx plus b. Okay, and then we'll just fill that in, and then we'll have our equations. Now, these are the things that we're going to go through. Step 1 is easy, step 2 is a little difficult, but let's look at a couple examples. First example, it says write the equation that represents the line that gives us a slope of 3 over 2 and it passes through a point at -2, -4. Okay, so every time we go to solve these problems, we got to find slope first, then we got to find the y-intercept, and then we make our equations. Okay, that's exactly what it's talking about over here off to the side. If we can accomplish these 3 things, then we'll have our answer. But just to give you a background about some of this information, okay, we're writing our equation in y equals mx plus b. Format. Okay, since we're writing in y equals mx plus b, we're just going to label a couple of things. We know that the m is our slope. We know that b is our y-intercept. Okay, the 2 new things that we have to know now deals with the x and the y. And the x and the y is actually 2 random points on that line. So the x and the y that you see in the equation is any point that is given. Okay, so it's just a point, and then it's the order pairs from that point. Okay, so it's going to be the x and the y from, we're going to use the first point every time. You don't have to, but it's just keeping a pattern. Okay, so that point that they gave us, that's what the x and the y represents in the actual formula. We got to find m, we got to find b. Okay, so we need slope. So when we go to write, every time we need m, and we got to find b. So that's the goal. Okay, but in this case, if we look at the problem, they told us that slope is 3 over 2. So they gave it to us this time. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But they didn't say anything about my y-intercept, so because they didn't say it, we got to find it. So let's start plugging stuff in. So when I say plug in, what we're doing is taking the formula, the template, y equals mx plus b. We're going to fill stuff in. Okay, so we know what slope is 3 over 2. Alright, we don't know what b is, but we know what the point that they gave us. And I told you up here, okay, that this point is any order pair from the line. They gave us a point here, and they told us it was -2, -4. So that means under my y, I'm going to put -4 because that's the y coordinate. And then for my x, right beside my 3 over 2, I'm going to put -2. And then everything else that I did not fill in will just come down. Okay, so 3 over 2 times -2, when we multiply those 2 things together, what we end up with is -3. I didn't use my b, so I bring it down, nor did I use my -4 yet, so it comes down. Now I'm solving for b, so I got to get it by itself. So that means I got to take this -3 to the other side of my equal sign. And whenever it crosses the equal sign, it becomes its opposite, so I'm going to put a +3. Okay? Then we got opposite signs, -4, +3. That means we have to subtract them. That's going to be 1. take the sign of the larger, it's going to be negative, and that tells me that my b is going to be -1. Okay, now once I got my b, and I can fill it in my actual blank, now I can make my equation. So my final equation is going to be y equals 3/2 x minus 1, and that will be my solution, or my answer that I will have to find. Okay, so that's example 1. Let's go. Alright, so this next example, it says, what is the y-intercept of the line that passes through the points -6, 3 and 2, 7? So in this one, they didn't give us much. They just gave us 2 points. But what we still got to remember, we got to fill in y equals mx plus b every time. Okay, so with y equals mx plus b, we need our slope. We're going to need our y-intercept. But this time, they didn't tell us anything about slope or y-intercept. They just gave us points on the line. And they want us to find the y-intercept. So in order for us to find the slope or in the y-intercept from this, we got to use the x and the y that they gave us from that ordered pair. And that's going to be the point, or points. This time it's points because they gave us 2. So we got the 2 points for the x and y. Okay? That's just the background for this question. But because they didn't tell us what the slope was, nor did they tell us what the y-intercept was, we got to find both of them. Alright, so whenever they gave us 2 points, we've done this before, I'm going to do a mini table. Okay, where I make my table, I put my x and my y values. Then I stack my order pairs on top of each other. That's going to give me -6 and 3 on my first row. Second row, I got 2 and 7. Okay, what happened to 3 to become 7? So that was an increase of 4. What happened to -6 to become +2? Negative to a positive is definitely an increase, and because the signs are different, we'll add them together. That's going to be 8. Okay, so that means my slope, when I write it as a fraction, is going to be 4/8, but I can simplify 4/8, and it's going to become 1/2. So my m, 1/2. Okay, now once I find that m, using that same information that we had, we're going to plug it into our formula, y equals mx plus b. Okay, m we said was 1/2, so right under it, I'm going to put 1/2. Okay, now this is the point where it can get difficult, but we have to pick a point from the 2 points that they gave us. It don't matter which one, but we're going to always pick the first one. Okay, so in this point, the x is -6, the y is 3. So under my y, I'm going to put 3 because that's what it is. Under my x, I'm going to put -6 and put it in parentheses because it means multiply. Everything else I did not change will just come down. My equal sign and my positive b. So now I got to take 1/2 and times it to -6. That's basically 1/2 of -6, which is -3. I bring down my b and my +3 over here. Okay? Just like when we solved equations, we got to get the actual variable and the number separated, the constant. So I'm going to take the -3, move it to the front, but when I cross that equal sign will change. This one has gone. So we got 3 plus 3. It's going to be making 6, leaving me with b. So my b is 6, +6. So now I'm going to make my equation. We got y equals 1/2 x plus 6. Okay, so that's that example with the 2 points. So when 2 points, we got to find slope. After we find slope, then we have to plug in what we know into our equation, y equals mx plus b. Then we'll solve for the actual b. Then we'll write our equation. Okay, so that completes that example. Last example. Okay, so in this question it says in the table below, y is a linear function of x. So this is a linear function. It says what is the y-intercept of the function? We're looking for the y-intercept. So we're looking for what b is going to be equal. Alright, so we know we got to find B. But before I can find B, I need to know what M is. Okay? This time they gave us the table. Now, when they give us tables, we have a whole bunch of points to choose from. But we're going to pick the first two rows. Alright? So I'm just going to box the first two rows to let you know that these are the ones we're working with. And the rest don't matter. Because I only need 2 points in order to find slope. So let me find slope first. Make my little mini table. So the x value for the first one was -6. Y value was -1. Then we got -3, +1. So from -1 to +1, that was an increase of 2. Sounds so different. So you add them and find out if it was an increase or decrease. Then from here, we went from -6 to -3. That was still an increase, but that was an increase of 3. Okay? So that means my slope is 2/3. So we found M, and write it up at the top so we can keep it together, 2/3. Now once I find M, I gotta plug everything that I do have in y equals mx plus b. So under M, we're gonna put 2/3. We need our x, and we need to find out what our y is. So I'm gonna go back to my table. I can go to this table or my mini table. Okay, the x we have was -6. So under x, I'm gonna put -6. The y we got is -1. So under y, I'm gonna put -1. So when I multiply 2/3 times -6, that's going to give me a -4. And don't forget to bring your b down. Then I didn't use -1 yet, so I bring it down. So now I got to get b by itself. So that means I'm going to take and move -4 to the other side. When I cross that equal sign, it becomes its opposite, which is a positive. And the negative goes away. So we got -1 plus 4. It's going to be 3. So b equals 3. So I just found out what my answer was because all they wanted was my y-intercept, not my equation. B is equal to -3. So that's my answer. Okay? So we just finished the 3 examples that we needed to cover for writing an equation of a line algebraically. Now, like I said before, that step 2, finding the y-intercept, can be the hardest part. But we're going to practice that a little bit more. Okay? If you have questions, write them down. Ask me in class. Do not hesitate to ask me questions, ladies and gentlemen, because this can be difficult the first time you do it. Other than that, just know, find slope, find y-intercept, make your equation. All right? And that's the end of this set of notes.